was that the best road course race of the next gen era? If you ask me, I'm going to say yes. But anyway, folks, welcome back to another video. My name is Joseph Igo, and today we are recapping everything we saw at Circuit of the Americas yesterday, with Christopher Bell going back to back. Congrats to him. Crazy race, all things considered, when you consider how everything played out. And in the end, I think Christopher Bell proves that he is the best current driver in the NASCAR Cup Series. And I'm waiting till next week to make my power rankings of where everybody lies, but I can tell you right now, I think it's going to be Christopher Bell number one and William Byron number two on that list. I think it's pretty obvious that through the first three races, those are the two best drivers. And what a drive by Christopher Bell, really. Um, it looks like he started around 19th in the field and drove it all the way up for the win. I'm forgetting, how exactly, his race played out, but he ends up in the end. He ends up with, the better tire strategy than Kyle Busch there at the end of the race. On that final stop, he ends up staying out. I believe it was anywhere between like 6 or 7 laps longer than Busch. Gives himself a good tire advantage as the laps will be winding down. And then, of course, we get that wreck between Denny Hamlin and Ty Dillon, which I've seen some people speculating on that. But as to, was Hamlin maybe trying to help out Christopher Bell there? I'm not going to speculate. I don't think so, but that's just what people are saying. I think that obviously helped out Christopher Bell because then he didn't have to make up so much ground between him and Kyle Busch. They do the restart. It's a great battle ensues, and I believe Bell ends up making the pass for the win with roughly 5 or 6 laps to go, I think. But that doesn't mean, don't trust me, that does not mean that this thing slowed down when that happened, because when Busch and Bell were battling, you had William Byron and Tyler Reddick right behind them, and as soon as Kyle Busch used up all of his stuff and Christopher Bell was able to get by him, you had Reddick and or Byron and Reddick there immediately to challenge him. And there were points where this thing was like practically like 4 wide for the lead, or maybe not necessarily entirely 4 wide in the natural sense, but they were running 1, 2, 3, 4 for the lead, basically side by side, nose to bumper for the final. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4 for at least 2 or 3 of those closing laps, and then for those final couple laps, William Byron is right there to challenge Christopher Bell, and we had no clue who was going to win until they came off that final turn onto that front straightaway. So very impressive drive for Christopher Bell, especially holding off Byron and Reddick there at the end. And great strategy call from the number 20 team, because they could have taken the same route and pitted with Busch, Byron, and Reddick and all them, but they took the right strategy, and it ended up paying off in the end. And that's where your money's made in the Cup Series, is making those right strategy calls at the right time. Just look at all the times where it's happened with Kyle Larson and Cliff Daniels. So congrats again to the 20 team. Fantastic drive. Let's get in a little to how this race played out, chronologically. So we get lap 1, which was chaos. Crazy lap 1. First off, just coming to the green, Bubba Wallace is nearly wrecked by Carson Hocevar, because at COTA, the restart zone's super far back and you can kind of race to the line. Well, as they were approaching the line, Carson Hocevar nearly spins Bubba Wallace out, but Wallace saves it and is able to keep it straight going up that hill. And then they get to the top of the hill. Ross Chastain decides, I think it's the last lap and not the first lap, and spins Chase Elliott. So a great car. Both those cars, Chastain and Elliott, both were expected to be contenders, neither of whom really were contenders for the majority of the day because of said incident on lap 1. Elliott not too pleased with Chastain and came over the radio, making sure that Chastain was in the wrong there, and declared that whenever they would get back to Chastain, that they were going to turn him. And we saw how that played out later in the race. He gets up to Chastain, and Chastain lets him by real quick. So I think payback for that will definitely be coming down the road. It's just a matter of if and when. I think Phoenix will be a good chance for that, just, given it's a slower-ish type track, and that it might be safer to maybe use Ross up if he's going to use him up and potentially wreck him, it wouldn't be as dangerous of a situation as it will be the following 2 weeks at Las Vegas and Homestead. So that'll definitely be a storyline we'll be paying attention to in Phoenix. We've obviously known these two, Chastain and Elliott, have gotten into it before at Phoenix when Chastain wrecked Elliott in the championship race on the restart of stage 3 in, I believe it was 2022, when Logano won his second championship. So these two have history at this track. Let's see if it plays out again. And then also on the first lap, you had Denny Hamlin getting a bunch of damage. I don't know if they ever actually showed what happened there. And then Connor Zilisch also got damage, and it didn't end. That damage did not end his day, but it did put him back in the field because he had to pit with a tire going down really early. I believe that was the case. Don't quote me on that one, but so yeah, calamity on the first lap, and then you had Ty Dillon slamming the wall on the front straightaway, bringing out no caution, surprisingly, when he was turned by Austin Cindric. Surprisingly enough, I don't think any other cars were really caught up in that either, which was good because then it, like I said, it prevented the caution from coming out. Crazy, kind of not a lot of cautions until the very end of this race. It was pretty much caution free until you had that. Well, we'll get into it later, but until stage 3, it felt like really clean racing. Kind of almost, and a lot of people didn't really acknowledge this last week. Last week, we didn't have a ton of cautions until the final stage. So I think that Daytona 500 really may have gotten some people online, even though we saw what happened at the end of Atlanta there. But the racing's been really clean. So props to all the drivers for that. A big storyline in this race was the track limit penalties. They began getting enforced. Like Bubba Wallace gets a track limit penalty there early in the first stage, and funny enough, ends up because of all the people or all the drivers in the front pitting and flipping the stage. Wallace gets the track limits penalty and then wins the first stage. So not the day the 23 team wanted, but ends up, salvaging it with a lot of points there and a valuable playoff point by winning the stage. So, but bizarre with the whole track limits thing, they kind of started the race like it was getting enforced, even though they didn't enforce it at the Xfinity race the day prior. And then they just basically got rid of them. It was weird because then later on, in stage 2, you end up with you get Kyle Larson getting a track limits penalty before his own disaster, which takes place later. And then even later in the race, you end up with I know Alex Bowman got two. He got 2 track limits penalties and still ends up finishing 9th. So a big result there for Alex Bowman. But back to Larson for a sec. He gets the track limits penalty and then decides to flip the stage with the leaders coming to the end of stage 2. And they did not get the right front, or it was either right front or the back right tire. Didn't get that thing on all the way. And that tire ends up coming off the car on track. And luckily the tire went off the track, so they didn't have to throw the caution with 2 to go in the stage. But that will be probably a 4-race suspension for Cliff Daniels and a fine to the 5 team. So bad, very bad for Larson and the 5 team. They end up finishing, I believe, 32nd on the day. Crazy. I'll get into it in the Phoenix video. Where everybody lies in the standings, but Kyle Larson, he's going to need a couple good weeks coming up. I'm not concerned by any means of him not making the playoffs or anything, but these finishes got to certainly improve, that's for sure. I mean, yes, I get last week he gets that 3rd place pretty unexpectedly, but that's an uncharacteristic mistake by the 5 team with the loose wheels. So just got to tighten things up. It's early. Is what it is. I'm confident they will fix it, but just some uncharacteristic mistakes for the 5 team. So is what it is there. Ryan Preece ends up winning that stage there at the end of stage 2, so some good points for him. I know him, Ryan Blaney, I believe, stayed out. So a lot of good points there for some drivers who really weren't in the mix and not guys you typically think of at these road courses who were able to leave with some points salvaging their day. And then getting into stage three, obviously stage three starts, and pretty soon after that, you have the Suarez spin and getting clobbered by Connor Zilic. Really hard hit there for Zilic into Suarez. Very glad to see both of those guys are A-OK. But, man, disappointing day for Trackhouse. I mean, obviously you got Zilic making his Cup Series debut. You got Suarez, who has had success at this track and, really needs to utilize the tracks he's good at to get good results because his job is potentially on the line from Zilic. So, and was not able to get it done today. So, very disappointed with him, or very disappointing result for him as well. And then I don't remember exactly why Chastain finished 12th. Because he was making up some good headway there in the final stage as the leaders were battling there at the end. But you do end up with SVG getting a 6th place finish so he ends up kind of also taking the Bell route where he stayed out a lot longer than everybody else. And when that Hamlin and Dillon wreck happens it happens with 17 to go and they come back to green with like 13 or 12 to go. There was a lot of people thinking SVG had the better tire advantage than Christopher Bell because, as good as Christopher Bell's tire advantage was, I'm pretty sure SVG had a larger one. So, it's a fine 6th place finish for SVG, but he probably would have liked to have been in contention for the win. But, tough day for Trackhouse as a whole, but plenty of road course on the schedule to get it figured out, especially for a guy like SVG. But especially even like Chastain, obviously has won here before, but just not the day you want to see if you're Trackhouse. This was billed like a really big weekend for them, and it just kind of went up in flames. So very disappointing to see there. But another kind of crazy result was Justin Haley. He was running 9th with I have it in my notes here with 28 to go. Let's see where Haley ends up finishing. He ends up in 16th. I mean, say what you want. I mean, he doesn't get any points or anything crazy on the day, but certainly a great result for Justin Haley there, kind of coming out of nowhere and running well at least at a point in this race. So really got to give them some credit there as well. I guess let's just round out the rest of these guys at the top. How about some of these top 10s like Noah Gragson or Todd Gilliland? I mean, nobody really saw either of those two coming and both finish in the top 10, and great result, I think, for both those two, because those are two, like I kind of mentioned, not really two of the guys you'd expect to be running up front at these road courses, but end up finding a way to to salvage a good, solid finish out of things. So definitely a great result for them. Carson Hocevar looked really good at times today. I didn't really catch how his day went sideways, and he ended up more of a mid-pack car because he was running in the top 5 or 10 for multiple times throughout this race. So not the finish you'd like to see, but certainly that speed was no doubt there. It was very obvious. So great things to come on that end. And then also AJ Allmendinger, I'm forgetting as well with him how his day went sideways, but Allmendinger was right there in the mix late in this race. He was running inside the top 5 in the final stage. Something clearly happened because I don't know how he ends up in 30th, but certainly had winning speed or top 5 speed, definitely. So I'd have to go back and look at how that ended. But yeah, certainly a wild, just overall crazy race. I really love the new layout of COTA. I don't want to see this race taken off the schedule like a bunch of people are saying, but we'll have to pay attention to that storyline and see where things go. But certainly love the new layout. I thought that race was incredible. I wouldn't go as far as to say it was a road course classic, but I think it's in that next tier of really fantastic road course races. And that 4-ride racing at the end was really fun. So if you're asking me, bring back COTA. I'm 100% supporter of it. I was not a 100% supporter going into the weekend. After the weekend, I'm all in on COTA coming back for next year. So with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and pay attention to the rest of my coverage heading into Phoenix next week. So thank you all so much for watching, and take care. God bless.